Thanks everybody for coming out to Pitch Day for 100K. It's a great day to pitch. Today we're going to hear from Bennett Kim, CEO of ZNest. Congratulations, Bennett, for getting through the flanks that we put in front of you to get here on Pitch Day. We usually screen through 15 or 20 companies for every one that actually gets through and appears here on Pitch Day. Startup MD is Nevada's statewide nonprofit accelerator and incubator. We operate count them five, nonprofit programs for entrepreneurs or founders, if you prefer, and four for-profit investment funds. Our nonprofit is supported by government grants mainly and corporate sponsors in the short term, and over the long term by accelerator companies who pledge a teeny tiny amount of their stock back to the nonprofit, and our investors who donate 5% of their profits to the cause. Those are also called a carry or a carried interest for those who are not familiar with it. So we run Pitch Day for 100K every other Wednesday, where companies pitch for the Q&A and for the $100,000 that comes with admission to our accelerator program. The investment actually comes from Fund NV, which is our separate for-profit pre-seed fund. And it's oftentimes added to, that investment's oftentimes added to from our investor syndicate, who piles on top of the money that Fund NV puts in. The average investment since 2020 has been about $124,000, not just the 50 that Fund NV puts in. And we also have an agreement with Nevada's SSBCI program, who will match our investment 1-to-1. So we've made 17 investments since 2021. Last one we made was right at the beginning of February this year. And those investments have ranged from $50,000 on the low end to $1.8 million on the high end. And now for the legal disclaimer. The founders pitching here today are pitching for investment from our SEC-approved venture capital fund and our accredited investor syndicate. We invite the whole community to attend for educational purposes, kind of like watching Shark Tank. The educational component is critical to our economic development mission as a nonprofit in Nevada. So once again, the pitches today are not a general solicitation for investment. For information on entrepreneur and accredited investor programs that we run, please visit our website at startupmd.org. End of disclaimer. So our nonprofit work would not be possible without the financial help from the grants that we receive and our sponsors, the City of Las Vegas, Clark County, the Nevada Governor's Office of Economic Development, the EDA, Eide Bailey, and KPMG are among them. So thank you to that group for your support. We are running our Angel Envy finale a week from this Saturday at Las Vegas City Hall. There'll be 7 companies pitching that day. It's our finale. These companies have been in due diligence for 13 weeks. One of them will get a $400,000 investment. And there's quite possible that a second or third company might get an investment too, depending on exactly how much money we raise. So it's going to be an exciting day. There's going to be drinks and food and a carnival going on, and at least 7 pitches happening. And our Secretary of State will be out to help me give out that big, corny $400,000 check at the end. Pretty cool that in Nevada, you get some of your top elected officials out and are interested in this kind of stuff. So come on out, meet Cisco, and come on out and see the 7 pitches that are going on. And it should be a fun day. Bennett, you can begin.
Hello, everybody. My name is Bennett Kim, and I'm the founder of ZNest, which is both a vertical SaaS as well as a marketplace for the senior housing industry. The easiest way to explain what we do is to say that we're an apartments.com for senior housing. The 2 things that to note on this cover slide is that first, we were seeded by Sovereign LTC, which are both public healthcare REITs, and collectively they have about 80 assisted living operators as part of their portfolio. And second, we just found out a couple days ago that we got accepted to AARP's accelerator, and we'll have access to a bunch of resources and relationships, and we're super excited about that. So a little bit about my background. I've been in senior housing for over 20 years. I first started when I was with the private equity firm Apollo, and Apollo at that time owned the largest private assisted living operator called Somerville. Somerville was bleeding cash in the late 1990s, and I joined in 2001 to be part of the turnaround team. Over the next couple decades, I started working with some of the largest operators and REITs within the senior housing industry. And during the pandemic, I decided I wanted to focus on solving some of these inefficiencies within the industry. The person to the right of me is Craig Fairfield. And not only were we classmates in business school, we were actually in the same study group of 4 people. So I've known him since 1997. His entire career has been in tech. He worked at Siebel, ClickTech, and Tableau most recently, and had exits in all 3. One fact that's not on his bio is that he owns a handful of apartment complexes, and he uses Zillow and apartments.com as a landlord. So he knows exactly what the functionality and the architecture of what we do, of what we're doing is. Leo Wong is out here with me in Las Vegas. His family owns a small 10-bed assisted living facility here. So he represents all of the SMBs, the small and medium-sized businesses that we're targeting. And lastly, Simona is doing our business development. She's also a 20-year veteran within the senior housing industry. So in terms of the board of advisors, Richard Ackerman was my boss back when I was at Apollo, and he's the one who led the turnaround. He was the head of Apollo's West Coast office and is now running a national senior housing development firm. David Un, to the right of him, is the only person on the board who's not in senior housing. He was the chief innovation officer for Samsung. And I know it's kind of funny. He was president of AOL at one time, but he came to me about 9 months ago and he was like, Bennett, can you help me find a Korean senior housing or a Korean assisted living in Virginia? And I was like, no, I can't. It's so hard to do. And I explained to him what I was working on, and he agreed to be on the board. To his right is Dan Kwan, who's with the new regime of Apollo, and they own about 400 million in senior housing right now. The 2 women here are probably the most critical in terms of our go-to-market strategy, just because they're the ones who are with the public healthcare REITs, and they've got about 80 assisted living operators in their portfolio. Talia is the chief investment officer of Sabra, which is about a $3 billion public REIT, and Wendy's the CEO of a $1.5 billion public REIT. So the 3 problems that we're trying to address are first, that the families have a tough time finding the right senior housing like assisted living or memory care. The only things that exist today are these referral sites like A Place for Mom or caring.com. And these referral sites say they're here to help families find the best possible care, but all they do is they steer you to their corporate sponsors. Second, the senior housing operators are completely frustrated by the high referral fees. These referral fees are typically about 1 month of rent. And the tailwind we have one for us is that these referral sites are the most hated companies in our industry because they act like bullies. And lastly, the other problem is that 80% of this industry still uses paper for their resident agreements and to collect rent checks. This is one of the most unsophisticated industries. If you remember, this is the same industry that still uses fax machines. So imagine if Zillow or apartments.com tried to charge 1 month of rent as a referral fee to landlords for regular apartments, right? They can't do that because of 2 things: competition and transparency. And those 2 things don't exist in the senior housing industry. We're trying to transform this industry so that's more like the regular apartment industry. So as you can see, assisted living in this country is completely fragmented. More than half of the facilities in the US have fewer than 10 beds. And if you count up to 50 beds, they represent almost 80% of the facilities. Everyone's focusing on the largest players. We're going to be focusing across the board from the smallest to the largest operators. So our solution is to create a B2C marketplace that is connected to a vertical SaaS for senior housing operators. So first, families can search for care options like assisted living or memory care for free. We've already uploaded 55,000 facilities into their system, and operators can claim them like restaurants do in Yelp. And if the families want more information, they can click a button and enter in that data. That data then goes through to our free CRM that we provide to the operators. This is the dashboard on the B2B side. Where we're going to monetize, though, is through digitizing resident agreements, integrating DocuSign, and providing payment processing. All of that data can connect to legacy enterprise systems through API integrations. So out of the features, where we're leaning most heavily on is the paperwork. This is an example of the paperwork for a typical assisted living facility in California, California being one of the most onerous states. So you can download state required forms, you can download best practice templates, kind of like a LegalZoom, or you can upload your own customize documents, and then integrate them with DocuSign. Since we're already focusing on digitizing paperwork, we're also going to provide HR docs and vendor agreements. The biggest opportunity for us, though, is data, right? Right now, the central repository of data is called NIC, which stands for National Investment Center. They charge up to $20,000 for data, and everyone that I talk to tells me that they're completely frustrated with the quality of the data because the way they collect them are through surveys, and all these operators are just opting out. And I'll say this as a former developer, everybody does things backwards, right? We pick sites based on what's available, and then we guess at the feasibility. It's the lenders and the operators that make us buy these market studies, which cost about $10,000. And we're collecting the same data ZNest is that the market studies provide. The way we should be doing things is we should be looking at a heat map of the entire country, drilling down to a state, drilling down to city, and then figuring out based on the hotspots for supply-demand imbalance where to build. So we're planning on selling data 3 different ways. 1 is the data itself. 2 is the subscription of the heat maps, and then 3 are the markets on a one-off basis. So in terms of the competition on the B2C side, we're not bragging that we're already so much better than all of these referral sites. We're simply showing that they don't want to be in the top right corner, right? They don't want transparency because they get credit for bringing families to operators in an opaque environment. So if it's not ZNest, it will be somebody else because the whole world is moving toward transparency. And then on the B2B side, the competition is primarily paper, as I mentioned before. Paper accounts for about 80% of the competition. And then the remaining 20% is that you can either bundle existing tech or there's also enterprise options. But again, we don't consider enterprise SaaS to be competitors, and we're already creating APIs into them. So for the market sizing, we did a bottoms-up analysis, and the difference between TAM, SAM, and SOM for us is that SAM and SOM is for US only, but TAM is global. And we do have plans to go to Canada next. The difference between SAM and SOM is that SOM excludes skilled nursing as an asset class. So we have a full go-to-market strategy, which leans on the relationships of our advisors and investors. Everybody in the industry kind of knows each other. We go to the same conferences 5 times a year. So step 1 is campaigning with all of the CEOs of the larger operators. These are just some of the operators that are affiliated with the investors, and we have a full tactical plan for the rest of the go-to-market strategy. As I mentioned, data is something that we're going to do much later. But in terms of the first step, we're going to be starting off with SaaS in about 45 days when we do our public launch. And we could do this without the marketplace. We're actually going to be working with the operators where they can email links to have the families fill out the paperwork as well as do the payment processing. So the discoverability takes place through the operators. It's truly a B2B2C model. I'm not going to go too much into detail about the adjacencies. I think many of you know about the term silver tsunami. It's this wave of baby boomers that are aging into the senior housing average age. We're uniquely positioned, though, because we're both a vertical SaaS connected to a B2C marketplace. And then lastly, we've raised almost $1 million today. We've raised $940,000. We'd like to raise another $250,000, and we're using safe notes with a post-money valuation cap of $6.5 million at the moment. And we just also signed our first customer without even launching yet, which they have an ACV, an average contract value of $21,000. Thank you.
I'm going to send it back to Jeff.
So thanks to both of our participating companies today. Thanks everybody for tuning in and watching today. Just a couple of things to note as we wrap up. Investors out there, if you're curious, you want to be on the investing side of this equation and you want to join one of our funds or be in our syndicate, jump on the website as well, startupnv.org. There's a bunch of different ways that you can show your interest, and we can hop on a private call with you to tell you how to get engaged in one of the investments that we have. It is restricted to accredited investors, and if you don't know what that is, just sign up for a call and we'll walk you through it. So there's a couple ways to get engaged with us through our pre-seed fund, Fund NV. We're starting to form up our second fund now. Our seed fund, the 1864 fund, which does follow-on investing to our previous investments and makes larger seed investments on its own. We have our Angel NV group, which you just heard about at the beginning of this, it's about to make its decision on a $400,000 investment next week. And you can join the next cohort, or if you really want to dive in and jump in right on the tail end of one of the 7 companies that we're investing in, again, just jump online, either the Startup NV or Angel NV, startupnv.org or angelnv.com, and you can sign up and still get engaged with us there. And if you join any of those groups, or you want to just be in the syndicate to get interesting deals put in front of you, again, you know where to go. There's lots of forms on there to fill out, and we'll get engaged with you. And thanks again to everybody who pitched, to both of the companies who pitched today, and everybody who listened in. We're going to see you back here May 3rd. I know during our Angel NV event, we aren't doing it every other week. So the next one is May 3rd. And then we'll miss another week, and then the week after that. But the day you have to remember is May 3rd. Be back here on May 3rd. We'll have 2 more pitches on that day at 1 p.m. right here on this same Zoom link, and right here in the same room, 2 p.m. Until then, take care of yourself. And if you can, someone else too. We will see you back here in 2 weeks.